My name is Rob Eagle. I was a research fellow this past year with the BFI and XR Stories at the University of York. And I looked at how we can understand the context of screen-based entertainment. So that's TV, that's film, and all sorts of online platforms within the daily lives and realities of Gen Z audiences. So what I'm presenting today is a mixture of some recent literature and recent studies that have been done across Britain, and some of my own research that I've been able to do as part of this fellowship. I worked for this past year based in Yorkshire. So this is a very kind of geographic specific case study that I'm presenting today across Britain and looking particularly at a community in Yorkshire. So when we talk about Gen Z, what do we mean? Now, Gen Z is generally 11 to 25-ish years old now. They were born between 1997 and 2012. That's a sort of roundabout age. This is often misunderstood. It's a very dynamic generation. And when we look at these studies, we're looking at numbers that are maybe different from one year to the next. We're looking at a very diverse cohort. This is the most diverse cohort really in recent generations. And we're also looking at an age group, a cohort that is that's often characterized as a difficult age or difficult to reach. And you see that a lot when you talk to people in the media and when you even talk to educators. They call this a very difficult to reach age. I find that that's a bit too much of a broad sweep because actually Gen Z is really quite interesting to look at. So I'm going to be presenting now 6 points to help you kind of give a wide kind of understanding of where Gen Z is at the moment. So when we talk about Gen Z, at the moment, there's really a lot of generational isolation. There's a lot of inequality that's been compounded by the pandemic. And I think something that comes up a lot in literature is this idea that there's been a delayed adulthood for this age group. That, maybe in previous generations, by the age of 16, there would have been more independence, or there would have been a different level of social skills. With this generation, it's been slightly delayed. We see a lot of anxieties around, say, climate, housing, employment, and mental health. We're also seeing numbers increasing in diversity. This is also, when you look at compared to previous generations in terms of those who identify as LGBTQ, those who are ethnically diverse within Britain. This is really the most diverse generation really in modern times. They're often called digital natives because they've been born into a world of digital devices, which is, sometimes a broad generalization because you also have a number of people who haven't had access to necessarily all devices equally. We're also looking at this very connected, media-connected generation, which means that they can have access to all forms of media online. That also leads to very individual silos in terms of interests. And I'll be talking about the silos a little bit later. When we look at the role of tech, particularly in recent years, there's been a growth in on-demand media, and that seems to have overtaken a lot of broadcast media, particularly for this age group. Now, alongside that, we're seeing the growth of experiential media formats. So things like, going off to immersive exhibitions and things like that. So there's definitely a sense that this age group wants things wherever they, on whatever device they have. But at the same time, there's still an appreciation for a special experiential moment, such as an exhibition. We're also seeing a small-scale optimism, which is that even with all the dreadful news around climate disaster and breakdown and the economy, we're also seeing a lot within this generation of a hope for at least their own communities, and I'll be talking about that a bit more. When we look at the types of platforms they're engaging with, generally, Instagram at this point really is nearly on par with TikTok. YouTube is just a little bit behind, with Facebook trailing and Twitter a bit behind that. when we're talking about the actual number of hours spent on screens per day within this age group, nearly 5 hours of content that they're watching, and 30% of this is broadcast content, which is 5 minutes more than what they're doing with than how they're engaging with Netflix, Disney, and Amazon. My research this past year has mostly been focused on a small cohort here in, this is Bradford in West Yorkshire. And Bradford is often called the youngest city in the UK. And so we wanted to look at particularly what does this mean for this dynamic amongst young people. So I conducted this research, which includes interviews and media diaries. And so that's what some of these findings are based on. This is one of the high streets in Bradford, and you can see the sort of geographic environment in terms of, when people say, oh, why aren't young people going out onto the streets? It's because there have been a number of venues that have shut, and so there's not quite as much access to live entertainment. And that, of course, affects the types of media that we're looking that young people are actually engaging with. So in terms of interviewing this young cohort, one of the biggest findings was how much this group is really not engaging with British TV or film, that they are really looking beyond mainstream British TV, and they're finding recommendations from their siblings, from their parents, and also from within college or university. There's almost no cinema going as well, unless it is something like Marvel or some sort of big blockbuster, but really for certainly coming from the BFI, it's spelled a little bit of a warning sign that this age group has not been really engaged with very well. However, there's huge popularity, of course, with streaming platforms. There's very little, certainly within this cohort, engagement with live broadcast TV, particularly from Britain. On the other side, there's really a high engagement with international programming. So this age group is really looking a lot at TV from Korea or Turkey, and anime. Anime is actually, I would say, a big blind spot for a number of mainstream British media organizations. They've really kind of ignored how much the anime has been growing a lot amongst this generation. And I think part of this is when I asked about this, they said, well, I see more interest in anime. It speaks more to me. I don't see myself on British TV. When we talked a bit about the future, there was definitely an optimism around their housing and the job situation, and certainly that their sort of niche interests in terms of anime and all of that, that they would be able to continue within this, but pretty much ignore British mainstream broadcast. So as we looked to the future, we also talked about some of the trends, and there were 3 real trends that really stood out from this group. I would say one is that when you look at the inequality and the cost of living crisis, that this, of course, continues to affect the type of media that Gen Z are really engaging with, and you see this in the cinema numbers, for example, and now in some of the falling numbers around paying for on-demand entertainment. We're also seeing increasingly this convergence with AI and interactive and immersive formats. And this came up in terms of actually a hope that AI can be a creative tool. There wasn't this kind of doom and gloom around AI, particularly within this age group. There was actually a lot of optimism that they can harness AI for all sorts of creative uses. And the third was this continued growth in on-demand and experiential media. So as we sort of see, the ability to engage with or download media on their phones, there's also very much this appreciation of being able to go out to, say, immersive exhibitions. And so I think this really sort of sums up, I think, some of the contradictions, shall we say, or the paradoxes within this generation. And when we talk about Gen Z, there's no one clear message to say other than they really are finding their niches. They're finding them mostly online, and that I think any sort of mainstream broadcaster or media organization really needs to respond to each of these individual niches. And not look at Gen Z in the same way that we looked at past generations. So in conclusion, we've always seen that this age group has been difficult to really pinpoint, to really reach through media. And I would say that that Gen Z is no exception, but I would also say that we need to understand the specific needs within this age group right now, and that is the world that they've grown up in, and that is just the daily realities that Gen Z have faced, even up to leading into the pandemic. And so I think when we're looking at the way that this age group engages with media, my message for any broadcasters or producers out there is really that this generation is looking for a diversity of media. They're looking for these niches. They're looking for them often online. They're looking for them on demand. And they want to be able to access these on different devices, whether it's their phone, their laptop, and that's nothing to shy away from. I think that we need to embrace the fact that this generation is finding niche media. And this has all really been confirmed by a host of studies. I've had discussions and I've looked at a number of studies from the BBC, from Channel 4, Ofcom. All of these studies have really helped to confirm how much diversity there is in terms of media for this generation, and how much it's difficult to really produce a sort of unifying or any kind of singular type of media for this generation.